The transmission arrived during the morning shift. Commander Helena Vance stood in the center of the command sphere, a circular chamber carved into the bedrock beneath. The Rocky Mountains, holographic displays surrounded her, each showing a different angle of the approaching fleet: 18 vessels, 3 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, 3 support ships. Their hulls were angular and dark, constructed from materials that absorbed radar and thermal imaging like black holes. 32 minutes until they enter extreme weapons range, said Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. His voice carried the weight of a man who had trained for this moment his entire adult life. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, standard first contact protocol. And GT snorts. And GT, also standard invasion protocol if you read between the lines. Put it through, Vance said. The holographic display shifted. An alien figure materialized in the center of the room, tall, bipedal, with 4 arms folded across a chest covered in what appeared to be ceremonial armor. Its face was elongated, with a jaw that split horizontally when it spoke, revealing rows of grinding teeth. "People of Earth," the alien said. Translation software rendered its words in flat, emotionless tones. "I am Fleet Commander Thrax of the XYLOS Empire. Your world has been selected for integration. You will surrender all military assets and planetary defenses. You will accept our governance. You will become subjects of the Empire." The transmission paused. The aliens' eyes, 6 of them arranged in 2 vertical rows, scanned the empty room with practiced arrogance. "You have 1 planetary rotation to comply. Resistance will be met with annihilation." The hologram faded. Vance looked around the command sphere. 32 officers, each managing a different aspect of Earth's defensive network, each waiting for her response. She had known this day would come. She had prepared for it. Every decision she had made for the past 47 years had led to this moment. "Analysis," she said. Captain Akifer and Okonkwo stepped forward from the communications bank. "They're using standard ultimatum protocols, no attempt at negotiation. Their fleet composition suggests they've done this before, multiple times. They expect submission." "Expected?" Vance asked. "Expected is the correct tense." The command sphere hummed with quiet activity. Officers shifted between station. Data streams flowed across hundreds of screens. Somewhere above them, 18 alien warships were approaching Earth with the casual confidence of predators who had never encountered prey that fought back. Vance walked to the main tactical display. The fleet's trajectory was precise, a direct approach that would place them in high orbit within hours. They weren't maneuvering defensively. They weren't preparing for opposition. Their formation was designed for intimidation, not combat. "They believe we're helpless," she said. "Their scanners would support that conclusion," T-War replied. "Our orbital defenses are minimal. Our fleet consists of patrol vessels designed for asteroid interception. Our weapon systems are centuries behind their technology. By every metric they have access to, we are incapable of mounting meaningful resistance." Vance smiled. It was not a warm expression. "Show me the projected path of their flagship." A red line appeared on the display, tracing the trajectory of the largest dreadnought. It would pass directly over the Pacific Ocean at an altitude of 40,000 km. What's beneath that position? Coordinates 147.6 west, 24.8 north, said Lieutenant Yamada. From the geospatial station, approximately 2,300 km northeast of Hawaii. Anything else? Yamada's fingers moved across her console. The location corresponds with Commander. There's no official installation at those coordinates. No military bases, no. Warning markers, no navigational warnings. Correct, Vance said. There's nothing there, nothing that appears on any chart, nothing that would trigger any warning system, nothing except 3 km of reinforced concrete, 17,000 tons of electromagnetic coils, and a projectile that weighs as much as a small building. The command sphere fell silent. Activation sequence Alpha 7, Vance said. Prepare the primary coil for firing. Target the flagship. We'll wait until they're directly overhead before we announce our presence. Torres turned from his station, his face pale. Commander, we've never tested the system at full power, the structural stress alone. We've simulated it 800 times. The margins are acceptable. Acceptable margins on paper. In practice, if the magnetic containment fails, then we fail spectacularly, Vance said. Which is still preferable to surrender. Fire the weapon the moment the flagship reaches optimal firing position. No warnings, no negotiation, no transmission of intent. She turned to face the room. This is the only chance we'll have. The XYLOs believe we are primitive. They believe we are fractured. They believe we will cower. They have never faced a species that builds weapons first and asks questions. Never. They have never faced humanity. The officers returned to their stations. The hum of activity intensified. Vance watched the tactical display as the alien fleet continued its approach, its arrogant trajectory unchanged. 31 minutes remained. She had spent her life preparing for this moment. Every promotion, every sleepless night, every classified briefing, every denial of existence when politicians asked about the Pacific Project. In 31 minutes, the truth would become undeniable. Fleet Commander Thrax observed the blue planet from his command throne, watching the swirling clouds and the patches of green and brown below. His tactical officers had finished their analysis. The data was clear. Confirmed, said Sub-Commander Vex, his voice emerging from the translator with clinical precision. The species has achieved interplanetary travel but remains reliant on chemical propulsion. Their orbital infrastructure consists of communication satellites and research stations. Their surface-to-orbit capability is limited to reusable launch vehicles that cannot achieve escape velocity with meaningful payload. Thrax's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Weapons. Kinetic-based projectile weapons. Nuclear fission devices with yields of 50 megatons, but no delivery systems capable of penetrating our point defense networks. They possess no directed energy weapons, no shield technology, no FTL capability. And their military organization, fractured, divided by national boundaries that persist despite their attempts at unification. Their planetary defense is managed by a committee representing 67 separate political entities. Their command structure is inefficient. Their decision-making cycles are slow. Primate psychology, another officer, said. They waste resources on internal conflicts. They allocate defense budgets based on political expediency rather than strategic necessity. They have not faced an existential threat in their recorded history. Thrax studied the holographic display. His fleet had engaged 43 species across 6 galactic arms. Every engagement followed a pattern: show overwhelming force, issue ultimatum, wait for submission. If resistance occurred, eliminate the resistance with minimal loss of valuable resources. The humans should have submitted. He watched the transmission logs. The ultimatum had been delivered. The planetary leadership had received it. They should be formulating their surrender by now. They should be sending diplomatic vessels. They should be begging for terms. Instead, the planet continued to rotate. Beneath him, no transmissions, no attempts at communication, no acknowledgements. Prepare the ground invasion force, Thrax said. When the deadline passes, we will demonstrate our resolve. We will eliminate their command and control infrastructure from orbit. We will allow survivor populations to witness our power. Then we will accept their surrender. Commander Vex said. Their surface defenses have not reacted. They are not launching any assets. They are not mobilizing their remaining military forces. This is unusual behavior. Unusual behavior from an unusual species. Our analysis predicted compliance within the first 2 hours. The humans have defied our predictive models. Should we adjust our approach? Thrax considered the question. His species valued predictability. They valued efficiency. They valued outcomes that could be calculated with mathematical variables. Proceed with the deadline. When they fail to comply, we will destroy one of their population centers, not a major one. Something significant enough to demonstrate our commitment, but not so large that we waste the resource value. We'll be generous. The fleet continued its approach. The flagship passed over the Pacific Ocean, its sensors sweeping the planet below. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. Just a blue world with its primitive inhabitants and their primitive weapons. Our sensors are detecting an energy signature from the surface, Vex said. Deep beneath the ocean, magnetic field fluctuations, extremely localized. Natural phenomena, unknown. The signature is inconsistent with geological activity. It appears to be artificial. Thrax leaned forward. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show the ocean below. The energy signature was faint, barely visible against the planet's natural magnetic background, but it was there. It was growing stronger. Could be their nuclear facilities, Vex offered. They do have underwater installation, scientific research stations, geothermal energy extraction. Could be, Thrax said, or it could be something else. He watched the signature pulse once, twice. The pulses were rhythmic, intentional. Commander, Vex said, if this is a weapon system, our analysis was incomplete. The energy readings suggest a mechanism we did not anticipate. All species have secret, Thrax replied. All species reveal their true capabilities when pressed. The humans are pressing. They are demonstrating that they have hidden their teeth. The flagship continued its trajectory. The energy signature pulsed again, now visible without magnification. We are approaching optimal firing. Position for any surface-based weapon. System, Vex said, if they intend to engage, they will do so in the next 7 minutes. Thrax watched the planet rotate. He watched the clouds drift. He watched the surface of the ocean where the energy signature was building to a crescendo. 7 minutes, he said. Let us see what the humans have been hiding. The Pacific facility was a monument to human stubbornness. Vance watched the status displays from the command sphere, each screen showing a different phase of the activation sequence. The railgun had been constructed in absolute secrecy, buried beneath 3 km of ocean and 2 km of rock. The project had consumed resources that could have funded 100 lesser weapons. It had required the cooperation of nations that could not agree on the color of the sky. But it worked. Primary capacitors charging, Yamada reported 23%. Magnetic field strength at 3,000 Tesla. And rising. Structural integrity. Containment walls holding thermal buffers at nominal. The cooling systems are operating at 85% capacity. We'll get one shot before we need to vent the heat. Vance nodded. One shot is all we need. She watched the tactical display. The alien flagship was directly above the firing position. Its course remained unchanged. Its sensors were sweeping the area with growing urgency. They had detected something they didn't know. What? Energy signature will be visible too. Their sensors within 2 minutes, Torres warned. They'll know something is happening. By the time they act on that knowledge, it will be too late. The command sphere was filled with controlled chaos. Officers called out. Status updates, data streams scrolled. Across display panels, the hum of the weapons capacitors built to frequency that vibrated through the floor. 57%, Yamada said. Targeting solution locked. The flagship is at optimal range. Atmospheric interference minimal. The projectile will exit the atmosphere with 0 appreciable deflection. Vance walked to the main display. The alien ship was huge, bigger than any human structure ever constructed. It carried crew, weapons, and cargo. It represented the Xylos Empire's reach and power. It was also about to become debris. 82%. Yamada said, magnetic containment is entering the critical zone. We're seeing some stress fractures in the secondary containment rings. Hold the field. Commander, if the containment fails at these levels, hold the field. The display showed the weapon status. Green indicators were turning amber. Amber indicators were flickering toward red. The railgun was designed to fire a single projectile at near light speed. It was not designed to hold its charge indefinitely. 94%, Yamada said. Containment field beginning to fluctuate. We need to fire now or risk a catastrophic failure. Wait. Vance watched the alien flagship. It was adjusting its trajectory slowly. Carefully, the crew was reacting. They had detected the energy signature. They were trying to move out of the firing path, but their movement was cautious. Cautious and slow. They still didn't believe the threat was real. 98%, Yamada said. Commander, I cannot hold the field much longer. The magnetic coils are experiencing thermal runaway. We have approximately 40 seconds before the containment fails and we lose the weapon. Wait. The flagship was changing course now. Its engines firing at full power, but Full power for the Xylos was different from full power for a ship designed to evade a relativistic projectile. Their acceleration was limited by biological constraints the crew could not handle. Extreme G-forces. They were trying to run, they were failing. 100% Yamada said, containment at maximum, we have 10 seconds before structural failure. Fire. The word hung in the air for a microsecond, then the display went white. Vance watched through filtered lenses as the railgun discharged its payload. And GT snorts. And GT, the projectile exited the facilities launch tube at a velocity that blurred the line between matter and energy. It passed through the atmosphere in less than a second. It crossed the gap between Earth and the alien flagship in less than 3. The impact was simultaneous with the firing. There was no delay. There was no travel time. There was just the flagship. And then there was the flagship's destruction. The holographic display showed the alien vessel disintegrating, not exploding in the conventional sense, disintegrating. The projectile's kinetic energy was so immense that the ship's atoms simply ceased to exist in their previous configuration. The vessel became a cloud of expanding particles, each one glowing with the heat of disassociation. Hit confirmed, Tor said. Primary target destroyed. 300,000 casualties. Minimal. The command sphere was silent for a full 5 seconds. Then the celebration began. Officers shouted, they embraced, they pounded on consoles. The emotion that had been building for years finally exploded in cathartic release. Vance did not celebrate. She watched the tactical display. The remaining Xylos vessels had scattered. They were abandoning their formations. They were trying to regroup. They were experiencing something they had never expected. Fear. Secondary targets, Vance said. They're going to reorganize. They're going to try to understand what happened. They're going to attempt revenge or retreat. Either way, they've lost their flagship and their commander. They're disoriented. What are your orders? Torres asked. Vance studied the display. The remaining ships were in chaos. Some were accelerating toward Earth, driven by anger or confusion. Others were maneuvering away, driven by caution. Few were transmitting signals that the human systems couldn't decode. Send a transmission, she said. Broadcast it on all frequencies, the same frequencies they used to deliver their ultimatum. What should it say? Vance thought for a moment, then she spoke the words that would define humanity's response to the galactic community. Tell them we accept their surrender. Subcommander Vex watched his species die. The flagship had been the center of the fleet. It had contained the command structure, the senior officers, and fleet commander Thrax himself. It had been the most powerful vessel the Xylos Empire had ever constructed. It had been invincible. Now it was particles. What was that? Someone shouted from the bridge. What weapon was that? What did they use? Vex forced himself to think. He had trained for unexpected situations. He had studied species that used unconventional weapons. He had prepared for surprises. Nothing had prepared him for this. Sensors, he said. Analysis of the impact. What was the projectile? The sensor officer stared at her display, her face a mask of confusion and horror. Tungsten. The projectile was tungsten. 10,000 kg accelerated to the reading is impossible. It was accelerated to 0.12 light speed. That's impossible. Their technology cannot achieve those velocities. Their magnetic containment alone would require. They achieved it. The projectile exited their atmosphere. At 0.12 light speed, the impact energy was sufficient to convert the flagship's core to plasma. All hands lost. All hands. Vex closed his eyes. Thrax was gone. The command structure was gone. The fleet was leaderless. And the humans were still firing. Secondary impacts detected. Another officer called out. Multiple targets. They have more than one weapon. The display showed 3 more projectiles exiting the atmosphere. They were smaller than the first, launched from different locations on the planet's surface. 2 struck escort vessels, destroying them instantly. The third missed, passing through the formation without hitting anything. But the message was clear. The humans had more than one railgun. They had an entire network. Their accuracy is improving. Vex observed. The first shot was perfectly targeted. The second and third shots demonstrate coordinated fire. They are calibrating their weapons during combat. Sub-Commander, we cannot remain in this engagement zone. Their weapons can reach us from the surface. We have no defense against kinetic projectiles at that velocity. Pull the fleet back. Increase altitude to 200,000 km. Regroup and analyze. The remaining ships began their withdrawal. It was not an orderly retreat. It was a desperate scramble to escape the kill zone. Vessels collided with each other in their haste to flee. Communication broke down. Orders were issued and ignored. The humans watched. They did not pursue. They did not fire again. They simply observed the Xylos fleet fleeing their system. Vex arrived at the secondary command ship, a cruiser that had been positioned at the edge of the formation. The crew was in chaos. Multiple species of the Empire's subjugated peoples filled the bridge, each reacting to the disaster in their own way. The humans, someone shouted. What are they? What species is this? Hostile, Vex said. That much is clear. Hostile. They destroyed the flagship. They killed the commander. They didn't even attempt negotiation. They just fired. No warning, no demand for surrender, nothing. They did demand surrender, Vex said. After the fact, they sent a transmission accepting our surrender. They intended to destroy us from the beginning. Everything before that was pretense. The bridge fell silent. Sub-Commander Vex looked at the tactical display. 17 vessels had entered the system. 12 remained. 28% of the fleet was gone in less than 2 minutes. Not from battle, not from a failed engagement, from a single weapon system that the humans had hidden beneath their oceans. We need to understand, Vex said. We need to know what else they have hidden. Their railgun is just one weapon. There may be others. There may be more. The planetary database, someone offered. We captured transmissions before the engagement. Their civilian networks are accessible. We have data on their technology, their culture, their history. Access it, analyze it, find out what they are. The officers scrambled to comply. Vex stood in the center of the bridge, watching the retreating fleet. They had come to conquer a primitive world. They had found a species that was willing to sacrifice its own long-term safety to send a message. He remembered Thrax's final words before the engagement. All species have secrets. Thrax had been right, but he had also been wrong. The human secret wasn't just a weapon. It was a willingness to use it without hesitation, without warning, without any concern for the consequences. We have accessed their networks, an officer reported. The data is confusing. Their species is divided into groups that have historically fought each other. Their weapon development was driven by internal conflict, not external threats. Their railgun was built to defend against their own species originally, and now they're using it against us. Correct, they have repurposed their internal defenses for external threats. Their technological development was accelerated by competition between their groups. They developed weapons that could destroy their own cities before they developed the ability to travel beyond their planet. Vex absorbed this information. A species that was capable of building weapons of mass destruction before achieving space flight, a species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times, species that had survived its own capacity for violence. They're dangerous, Vex said, not because of their weapons, because of their psychology. They were willing to destroy themselves before they would submit. We need to proceed with caution. Proceed, Subcommander. We're retreating. We are regrouping, Vex said. We are collecting data. We are preparing for the next phase of the engagement. The next phase, we should retreat. We should send word to the Empire. We should show the humans that their resistance has consequences, Vex said. They destroyed the flagship. They killed the commander. They think they have won. They think we will leave. He looked at the display. The blue planet rotated beneath them, its surface dotted with lights that represented human cities, human populations, human civilians. We will prove them wrong. Prepare the ground assault. We will show them what happens when you resist the Empire. Vance watched the alien fleet regroup. They had withdrawn to the edge of the system, well beyond the rail guns' effective range. The projectiles required precise targeting to reach orbital distances. At their new altitude, the weapon's accuracy would be compromised by interplanetary distances and gravitational interference. 12 vessels remaining, Torres reported. They've reestablished command structure, designating the lead cruiser as their new flagship. Status of our other systems. Orbital mines are armed and awaiting activation. Ground-based batteries are on standby. The Phobos installation is ready to fire on your command. Vance studied the display. The Xylos were regrouping. They were not fleeing. They were not transmitting surrender. They were preparing for something else. They're going to attempt a ground assault, she said. They can't match us in orbit, but they can still deploy landing craft. They have the technology to drop troops through our atmosphere. They have the technology to establish beachheads. The population centers, Yamada said. They'll target population centers. Force us to engage them in areas where we can't use the rail gun. Force us to fight in conditions where we have to protect civilians. Exactly. Vance had anticipated this. The railgun was designed to deter attacks from orbit. It was designed to prevent wars. It was not designed to fight wars that required boots on the ground, that required soldiers, that required willingness to endure casualties. Activate the ground defense network. She said, deploy the orbital mines. Prepare for landing craft insertion. We're going to defend every square kilometer of this planet if we have to. The command sphere hummed with activity. Officers called out status updates. Defense systems activated, soldiers around the world received their orders. Commander Tor said, we've intercepted their transmissions. They've communicated with their home world. Their empire knows what happened. They're sending reinforcements, 2 more fleets, arrival in approximately 48 of our hours. Vance nodded. Then we have 48 hours to demonstrate that resistance is not worth the cost. She watched the tactical display as the Xylo's fleet began its descent. The ships weren't heading toward the railgun positions, they were heading toward population centers, major cities, population concentrations. They want to threaten civilians, she said. They want to show us that they can hurt us. They want to demonstrate that our weapons don't protect our people. Can they do it? They can land troops. They can fight in our cities. They can kill civilians. The question is whether they can survive the response. The first landing craft entered the atmosphere. They were triangular vessels designed for atmospheric operations. They used advanced materials to withstand re-entry heat. They carried troops that had conquered dozens of worlds. Targeting solutions, Vance said. Launch the mines, fire the ground batteries, do not let a single landing craft reach the surface. The defense network activated, orbital mines detonated, creating fields of shrapnel that shredded incoming vessels. Ground-based batteries fired plasma bolts that turned landing craft into molten debris. The sky above Earth cities became a battlefield of fire and destruction. But some got through, a few dozen, a few hundred, enough to establish a presence. On the surface, ground forces reporting contact, Tors said. Enemy troops are deployed in North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. They're establishing defensive positions. They're engaging civilian populations. Vance watched the reports come in. Casualty numbers, battle updates, requests for reinforcements. The war had entered its next phase. Deploy the reserves, she said. Every available unit, every available soldier. We will not give them a foothold. We will not give them a victory. We will make them regret setting foot on this planet. The command sphere continued its controlled chaos. Officers coordinated responses. Data streams flowed. Vance stood in the center watching the war unfold. The HFYLOs had declared war on humanity. They had thought it would be easy. They had thought they would win. They were wrong. The fighting was savage. Human soldiers engaged the alien troops in cities that had never seen war. They fought through subway tunnels and skyscrapers. They used weapons designed for internal conflicts against an enemy that had never faced human resistance. HFYLOS troops were biologically superior. They were stronger, they were faster. They could survive wounds that would kill humans. Their armor was more advanced, their weapons were more powerful. But humans were relentless. We're losing ground in 3 sectors. Taurus reported, the enemy has established strong points in Shanghai, Berlin, and Mexico City. They're using our infrastructure against us. They're sheltering in buildings. They're using civilians as barriers. Order the tactical teams to adapt. Urban warfare is our specialty. We've been fighting in cities for thousands of years. They haven't. Vance watched the reports. Casualties. We're mounting. Human casualties. Alien casualties. The streets were becoming killing zones. Every building was a fortress. Every intersection was a battleground. Commander, the Phobos installation is ready to fire. We have targeting solutions on their supply vessels. We can cut off their reinforcements. Do it. The display showed the second railgun firing. The projectile traveled across the solar system, striking the support vessels that were attempting to deliver supplies to the ground forces. 3 ships destroyed, 2 more damaged. The HFY supply line was severed. Reinforcements from their homeworld will arrive in approximately 30 hours. Yamada reported, they'll be fresh troops. They'll have more resources. We need to eliminate the ground forces before then. Vance studied the tactical display. The ground war was far from won. The HFY troops were dug in. They were fighting with discipline and determination. They had adapted to human tactics. They were learning, but so were the humans. Deploy the civilian militias, she said. Every able-bodied person who can hold a weapon. We need to flood their positions with numbers, overwhelm them, drive them out. Civilian casualties will be horrific, but if we don't stop them now, civilian casualties will be worse. The militias understand the risks. They'll fight, they'll die, they'll win. The order went out across the planet. Civilians armed themselves. They fought alongside soldiers. They defended their homes. They died in the streets. The HFY were not prepared for this. They had expected resistance. They had expected military opposition. They had not expected every person on the planet to become a combatant. Our ground forces are advancing. Tours reported, the enemy is being pushed back. They're retreating toward their landing zones. They're trying to evacuate. Don't let them destroy their landing craft. Trap them on the surface. We'll deal with them at our leisure. The battle continued. Human soldiers pressed the attack. Civilian militias supported them. The HFY forces were overwhelmed by numbers, by determination, by a species that refused to surrender. This is unusual behavior, Vex said. They're throwing their civilians at us. They're treating their own people as expendable. The officer from the bridge nodded. Our analysis suggests they are willing to sacrifice any percentage of their population to achieve victory. They have no concept of acceptable losses. They will fight until they are extinct. Vex made a decision. Order the withdrawal. We will regroup with the incoming reinforcements. We will adopt new tactics. We will approach this differently. The order went out. The HFY's troops began their retreat. Human forces pursued them, preventing their escape. We will not be defeated by a species that uses its civilians as weapons, Vex said. We will adapt, we will evolve, we will win. But as he watched the human attacks, he felt something he had never felt before. Uncertainty. The war had become something neither side had anticipated. Vance watched the tactical display. The HFY's ground forces had been eliminated. The survivors had been captured or killed. The fleet had withdrawn to the edge of the system, waiting for reinforcements that would arrive in hours. But the humans were not waiting. They Had other weapons, other capabilities, other surprises. Phobos installation is ready for secondary firing sequence, TOR. Reported, we have coordinates for their homeworld. We have trajectories for their fleet. We can strike their supply lines. We can strike their supporting infrastructure. Do it. The railgun fired again. This time the projectile was aimed at the XYLOs. Empire's territory, not at their homeworld. That would be an act of genocide at their military infrastructure, their staging areas, their manufacturing facilities. We want to send a message, Vance said. We can hit them anywhere. We can hit them at any time. Their planets are not safe. Their ships are not safe. Their people are not safe. The messages were received. The XYLOs. Empire faced the terrifying realization that there was no safe distance. The humans could reach across the solar system. They could reach across the galaxy. They could reach anywhere. How long until their reinforcements arrive? Vance asked. Approximately 8 hours, YMADA said. They've accelerated their approach. They want to end this quickly. Let them come. We'll have more RAILGUNs ready by then. We'll have more mines. We'll have more defensive systems. We'll make them regret coming here again. The command sphere hummed with controlled energy. Officers worked there. Stations, data flowed. The war continued. Vance thought about her family, her children, her GRA, and the children. They were safe. They were hidden. They were waiting. The XYLOs had threatened everything she loved. They had threatened everything she had built. They had threatened humanity itself. She would not let them succeed. Commander Torres said, the XYLO's fleet is transmitting a message. They want to negotiate. Negotiate. They wanted to conquer us. They wanted to subject us. Now they want to negotiate. Apparently they've received the Phobos attack. They know we can reach them anywhere. They know we can hurt them. They're willing to talk. Vance studied the display. The XYLO's fleet was maintaining its distance. Their ground forces were eliminated. Their supply lines were cut. Their reinforcements were hours away. Send a message, she said. We accept their surrender, unconditional. All forces withdraw from human territory. All prisoners returned. All compensation paid, non-negotiable. We can't expect them to accept that. We don't expect them to accept it. We demand it. There's a difference. The message was sent. The XYLOS response was immediate. Anger, outrage, threats. They didn't believe the humans could maintain their offensive. They didn't believe the humans had the resources for a prolonged conflict. They were wrong. Continue the offensive, Vance said. Target their fleet, target their reinforcements, target everything they have. The war ended not with a bang, but with a message. Vance stood in the command sphere, watching the remaining XYLOS ships retreat. They were leaving. They were accepting defeat. They were acknowledging that humanity was not worth the cost. How long until they're gone? She asked. Approximately 2 hours, Thor said. They're loading their survivors. They're taking their wounded. They're leaving everything else behind. Good. The command sphere was quieter now. The chaos had subsided. The urgency had faded. The war was over. Vance felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, just exhaustion. We need to communicate with the galactic community, she said. We need To explain what happened here, we need to make sure no one else makes the same mistake. What should we say? Vance thought for a long moment. She had spent her life preparing for this moment. She had planned for every contingency. She had imagined every outcome. But she had never imagined what she would say when it was over. Transmit this message to every species within range, she said. Start with the HFY Empire. Send it to their homeworld. Send it to their allies. Send it to everyone who might consider doing what they did. The officers prepared the transmission. Message ready. Vance spoke. Her voice carried across the galaxy. Her words would be heard by billions of beings. Her message would define humanity's relationship with the stars. The Xylos Empire declared war on humanity. They believed they would conquer us. They believed they would subject us. They believed we would submit. They were wrong. We did not seek this conflict. We did not want this conflict, but we were ready for this conflict. We had prepared for this conflict. We had built weapons that could destroy their fleet. We had built weapons that could reach their territory. We had built weapons that could end them. But we didn't end them. We didn't destroy their home world. We didn't commit genocide. We showed restraint. We showed mercy. We showed that we are not monsters. That is our message to the universe. We are capable of absolute destruction. We choose not to use it. We have the power to conquer. We choose not to conquer. We have the ability to dominate. We choose to coexist. But if anyone else declares war on humanity, if anyone else threatens our people, if anyone else attempts what the Xylos attempted, we will not show mercy. We will not show restraint. We will show the universe what we are truly capable of. The transmission ended. The command sphere was silent. Vance looked at the display. The Xylos ships were gone. The threat was over. The lesson had been delivered. Commander Tora said, "We're receiving transmissions from around the galaxy. Multiple species. They're responding to your message." "What are they saying?" They're thanking us. They're saying the Xylos Empire had been expanding for centuries. They're saying they had no way to resist. They're saying we did what they couldn't do. Vance nodded. "Then we've done our part." She turned away from the display. The war was over. The recovery would take decades. The pain would last generations, but the lesson would be remembered. "Commander," Yamada said, "there's one more transmission from the Xylos Empire. Their leadership is requesting an audience. They want to discuss reparations. They want to discuss future relations. Send them coordinates. We'll meet them on neutral ground. We'll negotiate. We'll establish boundaries. We'll make sure this never happens again." She looked at the display one more time. Earth rotated beneath her, blue and green and white, beautiful and fragile. The Xylos had declared war on humanity. They had thought they would win. They had been wrong. Now humanity had to prove that victory didn't make them into what their enemies feared. They had to show the universe that survival and mercy could coexist. They had to build a future worth surviving for. And they would.